Hi, my name's Keith Cooper of Northlight Images, and in this video I'm going to try and answer as best I can one of the key questions I get asked about the new Canon PRO-1100. The most popular question is how good is it as a printer, and it is very good. Now I'll have lots more videos and a review about that. But the second most popular question is how much ink does it use for cleaning? Now, the PRO-1100, predecessor of this, gained a little bit of a reputation, fair or not, about using quite a lot of ink for cleaning. Now, there are all sorts of answers to why that happened, but how does the PRO-1100 differ? Well, in many respects, it's the same printer. Yes, it has an improved inkjet, which I am seeing in some black and white prints on art papers as slightly better looking blacks, but these are at levels that you may not notice. Yes, the colour gamut is supposed to be improved and things. It makes great prints, but then so did the 1000. So you're not going to see a huge difference in prints. And the differences you see between the 1100 and the 1000 are likely swamped by your own photo editing and photography skills. They really are very good printers. We're not at the era where you would get a huge jump from one printer to the next, particularly since the 1100 is essentially the same mechanical base. It's been updated because the 1000 is a few years old, but it is the same design. That means the same interface here, buttons and a screen and a non-touch screen. But before I go into the precise details of it, a quick resume of why inks are used up in cleaning. The mechanics of how inkjet printers work is phenomenally complicated. Whether it be a thermal inkjet head like this or the piezoelectric ones that Epson use, they are tiny structures firing tiny droplets of ink. Handling liquids like that, things dry, things stick, there's an awful lot of engineering goes into keeping these printers working. Now, as part of that, they have ink as a working fluid. What do I mean by that? I mean ink in the same way as you have oil in an engine. You don't power the engine off the oil, but you take the engine oil out of an engine and it won't run very long at all before it seizes up. For the same reason, some ink will always be used by inkjet printers for cleaning. If you don't like that idea, then get over the idea of having an inkjet printer, because it's how inkjet printers work. But the question that people ask is, does this use an excessive amount? What settings can you use? What are the optimal settings? Well, I'll say up front, keep it turned on. Now, I'm going to go through the settings in a bit, and also I recently went away for a holiday for a week, for a break up north, and I've got some photos which I'm going to be printing on this at some point. But anyway, I switched the printer off, pulled the plug and left it for over a week. I weighed the ink cartridges, and then when I switched it back on, I weighed them again. So I know how much ink was used up in doing it for a week. But anyway, the settings for optimal stuff. I'll come back to the calculations and stuff. Incidentally, there you have a complete set of ink carts. Now, the reason I kept these in a sealed bag is because they still have probably about 10% in each. But I wanted to use brand new carts to check which I'd got a full set of to test for the amount of ink use. Anyway, the settings. You have to go through the menus here and their drop-down system. There is a section of the online manual which covers the maintenance settings, although it's not necessarily as clear as it could be. But anyway, I need to go into the settings here. I go to various settings. I go to the printer settings. And I scroll down that. We go security, print settings, network, other. We go past the first screen, past the firmware update, and you get down to two settings which you need to have a look at. One is called power control, and the other one is auto maintenance settings. Now, first up for power control, I'll go to that. I'm going to select do not use auto power control. Now that means the printer will stay on, it won't switch itself off after a while, it'll just stay on. If it's switched off, it is off. It won't switch itself on if you try and send a print job to it or anything like that. It's properly off when it's switched off. But I've put do not use power control. That means the printer will stay on. Now the screen will go out after a bit. You'll have the LED on the front here by the power button will stay on as long as that. But that's in terms of power maintenance. So we've deactivated the power control, and that's power control. The next one down is auto maintenance settings. Now, this is not terribly clearly explained. So the three options are auto nozzle check, the menu options here, system cleaning frequency, and ink maintenance brackets tank installed. So we've got auto nozzle check. I've turned that off. I'm assuming that I'm going to be using the printer moderately regularly. I will occasionally run maybe a nozzle check test print on plain paper or something like that. But anyway, I don't want it doing the auto checking. System cleaning frequency. There are two options here, standard and short. Leave it on standard, although the manual does say that if you are working at altitude, they don't define altitude, but I'll say anywhere higher than Denver, which is a mile up, 5,500 feet or just over, set it to short. That's because at altitude, the inks stick and evaporate off easier. Now, they don't specify this other than just mentioning at altitude. I would assume if you're, well, anyway, certainly not here. I'm in Leicester in the UK. I'm at about 170 feet above sea level and it's pouring rain outside. We don't have humidity problems. We don't have thin, hot air. Anyway, so that's set to standard. The last one is the auto maintenance brackets tank installed. Now that particular one can be on or off. What is it? What that is, the inks are pigment inks. Remember how the ink system on this printer works. There are ink cartridges, these ones here, and they take 80 millilitres of ink per cartridge here. The ink carts are in here. When you set it up, some of that ink goes into what are called sub-tanks. Now, sub-tanks are little holding tanks in it, and they're used for equalising the pressure and making sure there's a smooth flow of ink to the print head. It's just the way the system works here. The auto maintenance ink maintenance on setting is what agitates the ink. Now, ink agitation will happen every so often with these printers. They will just say agitate, and you'll hear it shaking and vibrating. What it is, they're pigment inks. They need, ideally, the carts need shaking a little bit every week. It will have an automatic system which will just shake the printer a bit and just do stuff like that. So that's the setting to leave on. Back to turning the printer off. A week I turned it off. When I came back, switched everything on, got ready to weigh all the carts. It took 4.5 minutes to start up and did lots of whirring and shaking. Normally the printer takes well over 3 minutes to start up, but this one is about 4.5, so it's obviously doing something. After everything had settled down and it stopped making its noises and stuff, I took all the ink carts out and weighed them. It used a total, for all 12 carts, of 45 grams of ink. Now, I don't know what the density of this ink is, so I won't say in millilitres what it is, but if we assume it's similar to water, maybe a bit denser than water, that's going to be, 40 odd millilitres of ink. So perhaps half a cart overall. Carts currently cost about 50 quid here in the UK. So half a cart, that's 25 quid. So for switching it off for a week, 25 quid's worth of ink got used up when I switched it back on. That's why you don't switch the printer off. What does that mean for overall usage of the printer? Because, I know some people have complained about this. It's very difficult for me to do any measurements on this because I've only got the printer here for a limited period of time. I can't keep pulling the the tanks out and weighing them and doing stuff like that. I don't really. So what you're going to have to do is keep an eye on reports of 1100 use. Now, fortunately, because it's so similar to the 1000, we can go back and look at the 1000 figures, because some people have done all this work and maintained spreadsheets about ink use and various things like that. And in general, and this is some figures from someone whose work was reported a few years ago on this, in terms of, let's say you're making A2 sized prints, if you make 100 a month, and obviously A3 plus, for instance, that's 100, 150, it's quite a bit of printing, 100 a month. The ratio of ink on paper against ink used on cleaning is roughly 80-20. So if you're using the printer a lot, about 20% of your ink is being used in maintenance. If you were using it every day, it might be lower than that even. If, however, and this was the print, was 6 prints in a month, and of course it'll depend on frequency and various other things like that, the ratio was 30-70. So 30% used on prints, 70% used on cleaning. That's if you don't use it. So the takeaway of that is leave the printer switched on all the time. If you don't use the printer very often, if you decide you're only going to print once every 3 or 4 weeks and do a few prints on it and things like that, expect quite a lot of your ink to be used up in maintenance. Now, that is, I'm not saying whether it's good, whether it's bad, I'm just saying that that's a consideration you need to take into account if you're thinking that the printer is for you. As I said, it is an excellent printer. Print quality, I have no complaints. It works really well. It has a rock solid paper feed, all the features I expected, because the Pro-1000 was so good in those respects. The vacuum print system that holds the paper flat, for example, all very good. This one does panoramics as well. I'm going to be doing that, and we'll see how well this handles long sheets of paper and stuff. But just that question that I'm asked an awful lot, how much ink does it use? Now, this is just but one data point. So please don't ask me for more detail, because there isn't any more detail. This is purely indicative. Now, the fact that I've noticed that, that starting up, leaving it for a week, uses just under 5% of an ink cart in cleaning after a week. Now, I don't know whether it would use more if it was left for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever. I don't know. People will have to look into that. But there's the information, make of it what you will. I say, happy to answer questions and those, but as I say, I have no more detailed information on this. Canon don't provide any, so really it is a matter of just keeping up to date. I will, with the written review, and this is one of the major advantages of my written reviews over the videos, is once I publish this video, what I've said here is set in stone, that's it, I can't alter it. The written reviews I will update over time. So as I find more information on it, the written review will always have the most up-to-date information that I've found out on how to minimize ink waste on a printer like this, how much ink it uses, ink printing costs. If you're curious about the costs, rough costs of printing, I'll also put a link to the Red River paper ink costs use, and that gives you an idea of how much ink actually is being paid you're using. You can use the Canon accounting software to keep track of what prints have been done. It's very useful software. I cover that in the review as well. Needs some setups. For example, it needs a password setting on this, which if you're using this a lot is a pain to use. But anyway, there you have it. Hope that's of interest. And that's about it really. Thanks for watching. And as I say, if you've got any questions, let me know. Bye.